It began like any other night. The sun bled away below the horizon, leaving the sky bruised in purple and deep blue. Stars emerged, cold and distant friends we thought we knew. The moon rose, a familiar sliver of bone-white light. It was a comfort, a constant in our chaotic world. But that night something was different. A tremor ran through the very fabric of the evening, a feeling not felt with the hands, but in the hollow of the chest. It was a subtle shift, like a single note in a grand orchestra turning sour, a note only the soul could hear. We felt it before we saw it. People stopped what they were doing. They looked up from their evening walks, their late-night drives. A collective instinct, ancient and primal, told them to watch the sky. The moonlight seemed to thicken, to pour down not as gentle radiance but as a syrupy, heavy substance. It coated the world in a strange, pearlescent sheen. The air grew still, unnaturally so. Not a single leaf rustled, not a cricket chirped. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for a judgment it did not know it was about to receive. The silence was the most terrifying part. It was a loaded silence full of unspoken dread. Then, the change became visible. The craters and seas on the lunar surface, those familiar shapes we had named and mapped, began to shift. It was slow at first, like the stirring of a great beast in a long slumber. The shadows within the craters deepened, not just darkening but seeming to gain texture, to writhe like living things. The gentle man in the moon, a face of childhood stories, dissolved. In its place, something else was taking form. Something vast, ancient, and utterly alien. We were witnessing an awakening that our tiny human histories could never have prepared us for. The feeling was undeniable now. It was a pressure in the mind, a sense of being watched, not by a predator, but by something far more immense and indifferent. It was the feeling an ant must have when a human shadow falls over it. We were not important. We were simply there. The moon, our silent, beautiful companion, had opened an eye, and this eye, spanning the entire visible face of the rock, was looking down at us. It was an eye made of stone and dust and eons of cold, and it saw everything. It saw our cities, our homes, our beating hearts, and it was not impressed. As the moon's gaze intensified, the world below began to warp. The light it cast was no longer the soft, silvery glow of poetry and romance. It was a clinical, analytical light, sharp and cold. It bleached the color from everything it touched, leaving the world in shades of stark white and abyssal black. Shadows stretched and contorted into impossible shapes. The shadow of a simple lamppost became a long, skeletal finger pointing accusatorially. The shadow of a tree became a gnarled, grasping claw. The world had become a monstrous caricature of itself, drawn by an unseen, malevolent artist. This strange light carried with it a sound, or the absence of one that felt like a sound. It was a low hum that vibrated at the edge of hearing, a frequency that resonated deep within the bones. Some said it was a whisper, carried on the strange moonlight. The whispers spoke no words, but they planted thoughts. They spoke of immense empty spaces between the stars. They whispered of time that stretched for eternity, of life forms that were not made of flesh and blood, but of gravity and dust. They told us how small we were, how fragile and temporary our existence was. Fear began to spread like a contagion. It started in the quiet suburbs, where families peered through their curtains at the distorted world outside. It moved into the bustling cities, where the neon lights seemed to flicker and die under the moon's oppressive stare. People ran from the streets, seeking shelter in their homes, but there was no escape. The moonlight seeped through the windows, painting eerie patterns on the walls. The hum vibrated through the concrete and steel. The feeling of being watched was inescapable, a constant pressure on the soul. We were trapped in a cage of our own world. Panic gave way to a chilling, collective awe. We saw news reports from across the globe, every screen showing the same impossible sight, the living moon. Scientists tried to explain it as a trick of the atmosphere, a mass hallucination, but their voices trembled. They knew, as we all did, that this was no illusion. This was real. This was a truth our species was not meant to know. We had spent our entire history looking up at the moon, and for the first time it was truly, consciously looking back. And in its gaze, there was no warmth, no recognition, only a cold cosmic curiosity. What was this being? It was not a god in any human sense. Our gods are reflections of our own desires and fears. They love, they hate, they wage war. This was something else entirely. It was a creature of immense scale, a being for whom a millennium was but a single breath. It was born in the violence of the early solar system, a child of celestial collisions and stellar fire. It had slept for ages, a silent witness to the birth of life on the planet below. It had watched the dinosaurs rise and fall. It had watched us crawl from the caves and build our towers of glass and steel. We were nothing to it. Not an enemy, not a child, not even a pet. We were simply a brief, noisy phenomenon on the surface of its companion world. It was a being of cosmic horror, a term we had invented in fiction, never imagining we would face its reality. The horror was not in its malice, but in its indifference. It did not want to destroy us. It did not want to save us. It simply was. Its awakening was not an act of aggression, but a simple biological function, like a whale surfacing for air after a deep dive. We were just the krill, caught in the wake of its movement. The implications were shattering. Our science, our philosophy, our religions, they all crumbled to dust under that unblinking gaze. We had believed we were the masters of our world, the peak of evolution, the universe's thinking consciousness. We were wrong. We were a footnote in a story so vast we could not even comprehend its first page. The moon was a reminder that the universe was not made for us. It is a place of ancient sleeping things, of powers beyond our understanding. And we had built our civilization on the back of one of these sleeping giants. The moon did not move from its orbit. It did not roar or attack. It simply watched. And in its watchfulness, it broke us. Hope is a fragile thing, and it withers under the gaze of an indifferent God. The horror was in the reveal. The universe we thought was empty and silent was in fact inhabited. But it was not inhabited by friends or foes. It was inhabited by things like the moon, ancient, powerful, and utterly terrifyingly alive. We had been living next to a leviathan, and we had never even known it was there. Now we did. The night did not end. Or perhaps it did, and the sun rose, but its light felt weak and hollow. The daylight could not erase the memory of what we had seen. The sky, once a symbol of infinite possibility, now felt like the ceiling of a cage. We would look up at the blue expanse and remember the eye that was hidden behind it, waiting for the night to fall again. The world continued, but it was a broken world. People went to work, cars drove down the highways, but the energy was gone. A profound collective weariness had set in. How can you plan for the future when you know such a thing exists above you? Every sunset now brings with it a fresh wave of dread. As the sky darkens, we do not look for the first star. We look for the moon, and when it rises, we see the eye. It is always there now, watching. Sometimes we think we see it blink, a slow geological movement that takes hours. The shadows on its surface are never in the same place twice. We have become a planet of watchers, united in our shared terror. We are children who have learned for the first time that there are monsters. And the worst part is, the monster isn't under the bed. It fills our entire sky. Will it ever act? Will it ever do more than watch? This is the question that haunts our every waking moment and poisons our dreams. We do not know. We cannot know. To a being that has slumbered for eons, what is a human lifetime? It may watch us for 1,000 years before it decides to do anything. Or it may simply fall back asleep tomorrow, leaving us alone with the terrible knowledge we now possess. The uncertainty is its own form of torture. We live on a knife's edge, forever waiting for the other shoe to drop from the heavens. The world will never feel safe again. We now understand that we are not alone in the universe, but the company we have is not what we had hoped for. We are tenants in a house that belongs to something else, something ancient and unknowable. The age of human arrogance is over. The age of cosmic fear has begun. Every night the moon wakes and it looks down at us. And we, in our smallness and our terror, can only look back and wonder when our long, silent night will finally, truly end.